The new client thought it was just another personal training session at the local gym. But when she noticed the distinctive surgical scars on her trainer's arms, she realized she was working out with the combat medic who had saved her brother's life in Afghanistan 3 years ago. Iron Will Fitness was the kind of no-nonsense gym that attracted serious athletes, weekend warriors, and people who just wanted to get stronger without the flashy equipment and smoothie bars of chain fitness centers. Located in a converted warehouse on the edge of town, it had concrete floors, heavy metal plates, and trainers who focused on results rather than social media followers. Jake Morrison had been working there for 2 years, building a reputation as the trainer you went to when you needed real help, not just motivation. At 34 years old, he was quiet, professional, and incredibly knowledgeable about anatomy, injury recovery, and the kind of functional fitness that actually mattered in daily life. Jake's clients ranged from high school athletes preparing for college sports to office workers trying to undo years of sitting at desks. He specialized in rehabilitation training, helping people recover from injuries, surgeries, and physical setbacks that other trainers didn't know how to handle. What made Jake different from other personal trainers wasn't just his knowledge of exercise science, but his understanding of pain, limitation, and the mental struggle of rebuilding your body after it had been broken. He had a way of pushing clients exactly as hard as they needed to be pushed without causing further damage or psychological trauma. Jake wore long-sleeved compression shirts during training sessions, partly for practical reasons and partly to cover the extensive scarring on both arms. Most clients assumed the scars were from weightlifting accidents or maybe a car crash. Nobody asked, and Jake never offered explanations. The truth was that Jake Morrison had been Staff Sergeant Morrison of the 68th Combat Support Hospital, 1st Armored Division, deployed to Afghanistan from 2019 to 2021. The scars on his arms weren't from gym accidents. They were from IED shrapnel that had nearly cost him his life while he was treating wounded soldiers during a Taliban attack on his forward operating base. Lisa Henderson had been putting off finding a personal trainer for months. At 28, she was a marketing manager who had let stress, long hours, and too much takeout food undermine the fitness routine she'd maintained since college. But her doctor's warning about early signs of metabolic syndrome had finally motivated her to get serious about her health. Iron Will Fitness wasn't the kind of place Lisa normally would have chosen. She preferred cleaner, brighter gyms with newer equipment and group fitness classes. But her coworker had recommended Jake Morrison specifically, saying he was the best trainer in town for people who needed real results rather than just encouragement. Lisa's first impression of Jake was professional competence. He conducted a thorough assessment of her fitness level, asked detailed questions about her medical history and goals, and designed a program that seemed challenging but achievable. He was polite but not overly friendly, focused on her form and technique rather than making small talk. What Lisa noticed most was Jake's knowledge of anatomy and injury prevention. When she mentioned chronic shoulder pain from her desk job, he immediately identified the specific muscle imbalances causing the problem and adjusted her exercises accordingly. When she complained about knee discomfort during squats, he spotted the mobility issues and corrected them within minutes. "You really know your stuff," Lisa said during their second session. "Did you study kinesiology in college?" "I learned through practical experience," Jake replied, guiding her through a corrected deadlift movement. "Mostly trial and error." Lisa assumed he meant years of training clients and working in gyms. She had no idea that Jake's practical experience came from treating battlefield injuries in one of the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan. 3 weeks into their training sessions, Jake was demonstrating a shoulder rehabilitation exercise when he pushed up his sleeves to better show Lisa the proper arm positioning. In the bright gym lighting, the scars on his forearms were clearly visible for the first time. Lisa's reaction was immediate and intense. She stopped mid-exercise and stared at Jake's arms, her face going pale. "Those scars," she said quietly. "They're not from weightlifting, are they?" Jake quickly pulled his sleeves back down. "Old injuries. Nothing to worry about." But Lisa wasn't satisfied with that answer. The scars were too distinctive, too purposeful. She'd seen similar scarring before, on her brother Danny when he came home from Afghanistan 3 years ago. Danny had been wounded by an IED blast and had required multiple surgeries to repair damage to his arms and hands. "Jake," Lisa said carefully, "were you in the military?" Jake paused, considering how to respond. "Yes, Army medic, Afghanistan." Lisa's heart began racing. "When? What unit?" 2019 to 2021, 68th Combat Support Hospital. Lisa's eyes widened. 68th CSH? Were you at FOB Chapman? Jake looked at her sharply. "How do you know about Chapman?" "My brother was there, Danny Henderson, 82nd Airborne. He was wounded in March 2021. Jake went very still. "March 15th? "Yes, IED attack during a patrol. How did you—" Jake sat down heavily on a nearby bench. "I remember Danny Henderson, brown hair, about 5'10", from Ohio. Shrapnel wounds to both arms, possible internal bleeding." Lisa felt tears starting to form. "You were his medic?" "I was one of them. We had multiple casualties that day." "Jake," Lisa's voice was shaking, "Danny said the medic who treated him saved his life. He said the guy worked on him for over an hour, even though he was wounded too." Jake looked down at his scarred arms. "We all did our jobs that day." "No," Lisa said firmly. "Danny told me the medic who saved him got hit by shrapnel while treating casualties, but he kept working. He said the guy was bleeding from his own wounds, but wouldn't stop helping other people." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "How is Danny doing now?" "He's good, really good. He got married last year, started his own business. He talks about that medic sometimes, says he wishes he could thank him properly." Over the next few training sessions, Lisa gradually learned more about Jake's military service. He was reluctant to share details, but her connection to Danny and her genuine gratitude made him more open than he'd been with anyone since coming home. Jake had enlisted in the Army at 18, straight out of high school in Michigan. He'd originally planned to be a mechanic, but scored high enough on aptitude tests to qualify for medical training. After completing combat medic school, he was assigned to the 68th Combat Support Hospital and deployed to Afghanistan. The 68th CSH was a forward surgical team, Jake explained, during a rest between exercises. "We were positioned close to the fighting so we could treat casualties quickly. The golden hour. If you can get a wounded soldier to surgical care within an hour of injury, their survival rate goes up dramatically." That sounds incredibly dangerous. It was. Our base took rocket attacks regularly. Sometimes we were treating patients while incoming rounds were hitting the compound. Lisa tried to imagine working as a medic under those conditions. "How many soldiers did you treat?" "Hundreds, maybe more. When you're deployed for 2 years in an active combat zone, you see a lot of casualties." Jake's expression grew distant. "The worst part wasn't the injuries. We had good training and equipment for that. The worst part was seeing how young everyone was. 18, 19, 20 years old. Kids who should have been in college getting wounded in ways that would change their lives forever." "Is that why you became a personal trainer? To keep helping people with injuries?" Jake nodded. "When I got out, I tried a few different jobs, but I kept coming back to rehabilitation work, helping people recover from injuries, rebuild their strength, learn to work around limitations. It's not the same as combat medicine, but it serves a similar purpose." "And your scars?" Jake rolled up his sleeves, showing Lisa the full extent of the surgical scarring on both arms. "March 15th, 2021. Same attack that wounded your brother. Shrapnel from an IED that hit our medical facility. Lisa examined the scars more closely. They were extensive, long surgical incisions where doctors had repaired damaged muscles, tendons, and nerves. The explosion happened while I was treating Danny and 2 other casualties, Jake continued. Fragment went through the wall and got me in both arms, severed some nerves, damaged muscle tissue. But you kept working? Until the evacuation helicopter arrived. Couldn't really use my hands properly, but I could still direct treatment and keep pressure on bleeding wounds. Lisa shook her head in amazement. Danny never knew your name. He just called you the medic who wouldn't quit. As their training sessions continued, Lisa found herself looking forward to them for reasons beyond just fitness. Talking with Jake gave her insight into what Danny had experienced in Afghanistan, and she could see that Jake benefited from talking to someone who understood the significance of his service. Jake began sharing more stories about his deployment, not the traumatic ones, but the positive memories. The soldiers he'd helped recover from injuries, the innovations his medical team had developed to improve treatment, and the bonds he'd formed with other medics and doctors. The thing people don't realize about combat medics, Jake said during one session, is that we're not just treating physical injuries. We're often the first person a wounded soldier sees, the voice that tells them they're going to be okay, the hands that keep them alive until they can get proper surgical care. That's a huge responsibility. It is, but it's also an honor. Every life you save matters to someone's family back home. Lisa noticed that talking about his military service seemed to give Jake more confidence in his current work. He began explaining the connections between his combat medical training and his approach to fitness rehabilitation. In combat medicine, you learn to work with damaged systems, Jake explained while helping Lisa with a modified shoulder exercise. You can't always fix everything, but you can find ways to restore function, manage pain, and help the body adapt to new limitations. And that applies to fitness training too? Exactly. Whether someone is recovering from a war injury or a sports injury, the principles are the same. You assess the damage, stabilize what you can, and gradually rebuild strength and mobility. Lisa found Jake's approach to training uniquely effective. He understood her physical limitations and psychological barriers in ways that other trainers hadn't. When she got frustrated with slow progress, he reminded her that healing and strength building took time. When she was afraid of re-injury, he adjusted exercises to build confidence along with capability. 6 months into their training relationship, Lisa approached Jake with an idea. Jake, I've been thinking. Danny still talks about the medic who saved his life. He's been to therapy, he's doing well, but I think meeting you would mean a lot to him. Jake was hesitant. I don't know. Sometimes it's better to leave the past in the past. Danny's not stuck in the past. He's grateful for his future, but he's always wondered what happened to the people who helped him when he needed it most. Jake considered this. What does he know about me? Just that you were wounded while treating him and that you wouldn't stop working until help arrived. He doesn't even know your name. After several days of thinking, Jake agreed to meet Danny. Lisa arranged for her brother to visit the gym during one of her training sessions, without telling him who he'd be meeting. When Danny walked into Iron Will Fitness, Jake recognized him immediately. 3 years older, obviously healthier, but still the same young soldier he'd treated during one of the worst days of his deployment. Danny, Lisa said, I'd like you to meet my trainer, Jake Morrison. Danny shook Jake's hand politely, not recognizing him. Nice to meet you. Lisa says you're the best trainer in town. Danny, Jake said quietly, I believe we've met before. F.O.B. Chapman, March 15th, 2021. Danny's expression changed as recognition dawned. You're the medic, You're the one who—" I was there, yes. Danny stared at Jake for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He pulled Jake into a fierce hug. "I've been looking for you for 3 years," Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never got to thank you properly." The reunion between Jake and Danny created a ripple effect that neither of them had anticipated. Danny began visiting the gym regularly, not just to see Jake, but to work out and continue his own rehabilitation. Other veterans in the community heard about Jake's background and started seeking him out for training. Jake found himself developing a specialty in working with veterans dealing with physical and psychological injuries from military service. He understood PTSD triggers, phantom limb pain, and the unique challenges that military personnel faced when transitioning to civilian life. "It's like he speaks our language," said Tom Rodriguez, a Marine veteran who started training with Jake after hearing about him from Danny. "He doesn't just know about injuries, he understands the mental side of recovery too." Jake's approach to veteran fitness training was unique in the area. He incorporated principles from military physical therapy, adapted exercises for service-related injuries, and created a supportive environment where veterans could work on their fitness without judgment or misunderstanding. The gym owner, recognizing the value of Jake's specialized knowledge, gave him space to develop a formal veteran fitness program. Jake began offering group classes specifically designed for military personnel dealing with combat-related injuries and PTSD. "I never expected to be working with veterans again," Jake told Lisa during one of their sessions. "When I left the Army, I thought that chapter of my life was closed. But now I realize that serving doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It just changes forms." A year after their first meeting, Lisa had achieved her fitness goals and maintained them. Her training sessions with Jake had evolved into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding of service, his military service, and her commitment to supporting veterans through her brother's experience. During one of their sessions, Lisa noticed that Jake was working with a new client, a young woman with obvious mobility limitations and what looked like prosthetic hardware on her leg. "Afghanistan?" Lisa asked quietly. Jake nodded. "Army Explosive Ordnance Disposal. IED blast last year. She's having trouble adjusting to civilian fitness options." Lisa watched Jake work with the veteran, noting his patience, technical knowledge, and intuitive understanding of what she needed both physically and psychologically. "You know," Lisa said, "Danny was right about something he told me after he met you." "What's that?" "He said the medic who saved his life didn't just treat his wounds. He gave him the strength to believe he could rebuild his life after war." Jake looked around the gym, at Danny working out nearby, at the other veterans who had found their way to Iron Will Fitness, at the young EOD specialist learning to trust her body again. "I think we all save each other," Jake said. "That's what service really means." Jake Morrison still works at Iron Will Fitness, still helps people rebuild their strength after injury and setback. But now his clients know that the quiet trainer with the scarred arms is someone who learned his trade in the most serious circumstances possible, someone who saved lives under enemy fire and continues saving lives in a different way. The scars on his arms are no longer hidden. They're a reminder that healing is possible, that strength can be rebuilt, and that the people who care for us in our darkest moments often carry their own wounds. Sometimes the person helping you get stronger has been broken and rebuilt themselves. Sometimes the trainer who pushes you to exceed your limitations learned about human potential while saving lives in a war zone. And sometimes the most important workouts are the ones that heal more than just your body. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have been broken and rebuilt themselves. Sometimes the person teaching you to overcome physical limitations learned about human resilience, while saving lives under the worst possible conditions. So I ask you, have you ever met someone whose expertise came from extraordinary circumstances? Someone who used skills learned in combat to heal people in civilian life? Share their story in the comments. Because here on the Veteran Chronicles, we believe that strength takes many forms, and heroes often hide behind helping hands. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Help us honor the veterans who continue serving by helping others become stronger, healthier, and more resilient.